a tyrannical government, a government that's violating the rights of the citizens and violating the law. And we have that today. We have a federal government that violates the law.
What we're doing on the state level is playing a game of rock, paper, scissors with the national government. And if you've ever played that, you know that one can crush the other. We're trying to say we have the right, under not only the 10th Amendment, but also the 9th Amendment, to shoo them away and define this is within the realm of the state, not national government. Now they're going to whip out this Commerce Clause in Article 6 of the Constitution and say we have a right to regulate anything we feel like because it now does cross state lines. And we're ready to push back. We're going to push back, and the whole, not only the whole country, but the whole world is going to get a colossal civics lesson.
The Commerce Clause refers to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution, which gives Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. The Constitution enumerates certain powers for the federal government. Any powers that are not enumerated in the Constitution are reserved for the states via the 10th Amendment. It is clear that the states have had enough, and they are rising up to fight back against federal tyranny.
And no one can blame President Obama. We have only ourselves to blame because he's made it very clear, as has his Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer in the country. They just want to do a few things with gun laws, like take them away in large measure.
I think that the current administration in a year's time has moved farther and faster than the federal government has ever moved before. Now, does that mean there weren't abuses of our Constitution and the role of federal government prior to that? I don't think so. I think this has been going on for literally decades.
In my opinion, I think what has happened here is, you know, the American people tend to not really pay all that much attention to our government unless our government really overreaches its bounds. And so for years and years and years, the federal government has continued to step more and more into areas where they don't belong. They've reached their dirty little fingers into areas where they don't belong. But what they've done to the American people is they've done it, or they've served it to the American people a thimbleful at a time. They've given it to them a little bit more and a little bit more. And it looks like maybe when served a thimbleful at a time, the American people are a lot more likely to go ahead and receive it or swallow it, so to speak. What's happened now with the election of President Barack Hussein Obama and the dominant control that the Democrats have both in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives, in my assessment, in my opinion, what they've done is they've decided to go ahead and just really, instead of trying to serve up their encroachments a thimbleful at a time, they're trying to serve it to the American people in 5-gallon buckets. Well, when the federal government oversteps its bounds in 5-gallon buckets, the American people wake up. And the American people have awakened. The Patriot Uprising, what some people might call the Tea Party movement, whatever you want to call it, I call it Patriot Uprising. When the Patriot Uprising occurred, it really occurred and gained steam because the American people got fed up. They got sick and tired of a federal government that constantly overreaches its bounds. The federal government tells each and every one of us how many gallons of water we can have in our toilet. Our founding fathers never intended for the federal or central government to have that much control over our lives.
The federal government has encroached upon the very fabric of our senses. With health care bills and bailout bills, and with every kind of Patriot Act bill, our nation sinks lower into the pit of gloom and depression. The American people desperately want a way out, but the federal government has other plans.
Paul, we've all learned our lesson. From now on, we'll know better than to try to fight this sort of thing ourselves. We'll go for a sheriff.
You mean from now on, the Cartwrights don't fight their own battles anymore? Is that what you're saying? From now on, whenever we get into any kind of trouble, we have to go begging for help?
Not begging, it ain't begging.
Well, then what is it if it isn't begging?
It's asking. It's asking like other folks do when their rights are violated, Paul. It's asking folks whose sworn duty it is to uphold the law to come and help us. Paul, ain't that what you always tried to teach us?
In the last 20 years, we've seen an acceleration away from our Constitution and Bill of Rights and towards absolute despotism. The John Warner Defense Authorization Act, the Patriot Acts, the warrantless wiretapping, the renditions, the secret arrest, all of this is not only anti-American and completely illegal, it is textbook tyranny. It is anathema to our system of government. The Republican and Democratic parties and the treasonous, traitorous Congress have borrowed from all of the oppressive systems across the world and amalgamated them into the current system. And they paint everything they do in this patriotic glow, and it's for America and it's for the children. No, it's for the private Federal Reserve System that's hijacked this country and that has committed all these crimes. It's for them to protect themselves from the people that they have reduced to absolute slavery.
What everybody needs to know in this country is the issue of state sovereignty. Sovereignty, or if you're a sovereign, you have no other power above you. The states are sovereign. The key issue there is, who do you think formed the federal government? It was the 13 original states. Does anybody really think that the states formed a central government that was all powerful, that could turn around and tell the states what to do? This is exactly what the Founding Fathers started the Revolutionary War to prevent. They did not want another king, as it were, to tell them what to do all the time. We fought a war against King George III tyranny. They didn't want to bestow or award the new central government with omnipotence. Quite the contrary. The Bill of Rights was designed specifically to keep the federal government in check, to keep them limited in what they could do. And the 10th Amendment basically tells the federal government, if you want to get creative, if you want to go outside your constitutional boundaries, absolutely not. If you think we forgot something, you can't do that either.
Well, basically, the government in Washington has assumed powers that it constitutionally does not have, and that were reserved, as the 10th Amendment tells us, to the states. So if you're talking about states' rights, you're really talking about the claims that the states have to exercise certain kinds of power on their own without some kind of federal interference.
If they want to stop the federal government, they have to find a vehicle. They have to find something that's couched either in law or the Constitution. And the 10th Amendment is very clear about the state's ability, the state's rights and state sovereignty in stopping and curtailing the power of the federal government. So it is the tool, the legal and constitutional tool that is being used to stop the federal government.
Well, a right is something that you have, again, inherently, something that is part of your nature, something that you own. A privilege is something that's given to you by someone or some entity that has authority over and above you, that has the ability to control you.
Let me, just for the sake of the illustration, because I do like to pull up my handy-dandy Constitution, and I don't blame anybody. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Checkmate, by the people. Number 2, the 10th Amendment clearly says that the states have the rights to pass laws so long as they don't conflict with anything already in the Constitution. There's not one word in the Constitution that says Congress can do health care.
Rights and privileges are opposites. And assuming that that is true and that there aren't other options, either you need permission or you don't, then a number of other things are also true. One of the corollaries is that all of your rights derive from property. I pointed out that if I walk out of my house onto my land, I can walk back and forth on my land without asking for permission. Walking on my land is a right. Walking on my neighbor's land, on the other hand, is a privilege. And